Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 58. I'm Mark.
Oh, I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
And joining us today is our special guest, Ralph. Hey, Ralph, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Exodus 21 in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible gives explicit instructions on how to purchase, own, and treat other human beings as slaves, even going so far as to provide a separate set of instructions for owning Hebrew versus non-Hebrew slaves. Exodus, however, is not the only book in the Bible to show how the Christian God condones the practice. The book of Deuteronomy also provides a loophole to retain a Hebrew slave for the remainder of his life if he asks to remain with his owner's family, and the book of Leviticus provides instructions on how and where to buy male and female slaves alike. The Bible, being the alleged word of the almighty Christian God, makes it abundantly clear that the supposedly all-loving, all-benevolent creator of the universe has absolutely no problem with people owning other people as property that can be passed down as inheritance. The Christian apologist, however, would be quick to dismiss this fact by claiming, but that's the Old Testament. Jesus fulfilled the Old Covenant, so that no longer applies. Such casual hand-waving away of the obvious is nothing short of sticking one's fingers in one's ears and proclaiming, la la la, I can't hear you. This does nothing to address the fact that Jesus never once said anything to either correct the gross oversight of the Old Testament's immorality vis-a-vis slavery, nor to condemn the practice outright. It also brings into question whether, as we discussed in our previous episode, the Ten Commandments are still valid, or if they too no longer apply with the fulfillment of the Old Covenant. Oh, but you have to understand the context of the time, protests the Christian apologist. Every nation on earth around that time practiced slavery, so God was just providing rules on how to treat one's slaves. Simply put, I don't care. I don't care when it happened, or if 1 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people thought it was acceptable. Slavery is wrong. Full stop. If the God of the Christian Bible actually exists, and if the portrayal of his character in the Bible is accurate, such a capricious, immoral, evil God is not one I would want anything to do with, let alone worship. Neither the number of people or nations engaging in a particular practice, nor the beliefs of a given culture determine whether that practice is right or moral. As we've stated before on this show, if we accept morality as the evaluation of actions and consequences with respect to the well-being of conscious creatures, we can objectively and independently demonstrate that slavery is immoral. Regardless of the number of people who incorrectly believed it was acceptable, how long ago it took place, or the cultures who engaged in it, the practice of owning people as property is unequivocally wrong, and there never has been, nor will there ever be, a moral justification for engaging in it. Let's talk about that, shall we?
I like your casual usual line where you end your text with, let's talk about that, shall we? You know, after like such a...
3 days later. What am I holding on to there? I have some ideas concerning your first thought that happened...
No,
5 minutes ago.
Just on the heavy topic, to go, let's chat about that.
Let's have a friendly conversation about that.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Oh,
Ralph, let's hear from you first.
Okay, so we're attacking this head on. All right, so there are a lot of people in this world, and some people...
8 billion, one might say.
Yeah, so people are going to be used regardless.
Right, but there's a difference between being, quote-unquote, used and being owned as property with no choice in the matter, right? When we talk about slavery, we specifically mean the owning of people as property who have no say in what they're being told to do.
Mm-hmm. It's a business.
Yeah, well,
it was seen as that pretty much.
It's
like,
a living.
It's true. I think of today's business, and basically we're still enslaving the environment. We're still enslaving everything else but humans, but we're still enslaving humans with capitalism. I mean, how is it not just slavery with extra steps? Just like that Rick and Morty episode. Oh, can I play a clip from the show?
Yeah,
Yes,
I want to hear
please load that up.
So it's have you ever watched Rick and Morty?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so Mark, you wanna give
A brief rundown on Rick and Morty?
on Rick and Morty, and maybe even particularly that episode with the battery dying.
Right. So, for anyone who hasn't seen the show, Rick and Morty is essentially about an insane scientist named Rick, who is the smartest man in the known universe, who goes on all these different multi-dimensional adventures with his grandson, Morty. So they hop dimensions and get into all kinds of crazy, wacky shit. And in this one episode, it turns out that Rick had created a micro-universe with which to power his car. And the battery breaks down because, as it turns out, the people living in that universe pretty much went on strike and refused to generate the power needed for the battery to run. So that's kind of the basic premise of the episode that Luke is queuing up now with this one quote.
And I think it's okay. What I was thinking about is that to legally use a quote from, or like an excerpt from something. But I was going to say an easy way to execute any copyright problems is to be critiquing it, because you can sample a show and show clips from a show.
Yeah, the fair use policy.
Fair use.
If we then critique the show afterwards, does that not exempt us?
We can say like 2 things about it, and then we'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
So it's an awesome episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. 10 on 10.
10 on 10.
You have a whole planet sitting around making your power for you? That's slavery. It's society. They work for each other, Morty. They pay each other. They buy houses. They get married and make children. They replace them when they get too old to make power. That just sounds like slavery with extra steps. Ooh la la.
Ooh la la.
So right, they describe basically the structure of society as basically being still slavery, but simply with extra steps set up.
Yeah.
We're paying each other. We're keeping a system going. It's almost like the master is no longer a human being, but a system more so than anything else.
So we're slaves to the system of capitalism is kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And what they were getting
or
at.
we could say the 1%.
There's a trap to avoid here, though. This is getting close to that kind of equivocation where people sort of want to either excuse slavery or downplay the disproportionate effect of slavery on black people in the United States by bringing up indentured servitude, which mostly affected like the Irish immigrant population.
And the two are completely separate, right?
The two are completely separate, and I mean, indentured servitude is a limited contract, and it's sort of like
You're paying off a debt.
You're paying off a debt. Or you could be sentenced to it as a result of a crime or something, and in that case, it's kind of like a freer version of prison, but it's not a write-off of your rights completely, or your independence, or
Whereas slavery is a complete
yeah.
write-off
So
of
the
your rights.
the two aren't really analogous.
And that's something else that apologists bring up, right? Oh, they weren't talking about slavery in the Old Testament. They're talking about indentured servitude.
Yeah.
No. It's very
When you're
clear.
talking about multi-generational
yeah,
slavery too, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're owned forever, and your family and the people coming after you will still own those people for eternity, right? That the word slavery appears in these books of the Bible that I was quoting. I didn't quote them, but mentioned rather. Like depending on which version you read, it'll say treat your slaves such and such a way. You know, here's how to purchase your slaves. The fact that it says purchase your slaves in it, I don't understand how people can equivocate around.
But
that.
Mark, you are saying that you feel that the Bible justifies slavery in how they...
The Old Testament condones the practice of slavery outright. And therefore God does, because the Bible is the supposed perfect word of God.
Yeah, I just always take the New Testament to, in a sense, cancel out the Old Testament.
But it doesn't. At no point in the New Testament does Jesus say anything about...
guess
By the way, that thing about slavery, yeah, don't do that.
I guess I feel like my understanding of the Bible is that it basically culminates to Christ. Like, bad stuff, and then we end with good stuff.
Where's the good stuff?
The Jesus character showing up.
Yeah,
and being all, no,
but
be like this.
His character isn't all like puppies and rainbows. Like, he's still a dick in the New Testament in a lot of places.
Well, and does he endorse slavery in any...
He doesn't say anything about not endorsing
Well, there's
slavery.
an awful lot to go back and cancel out from the Old Testament.
Yeah, but
But he also explicitly says that whole "don't think I've come to abolish the old
Right.
law. I've come
not to change it."
fulfill it."
Right,
You know,
yeah.
and I don't. And he says something about bringing a sword too. You know, like this idea that Jesus is like this sort of get out of jail free card for all the shitty shit that's in the rest of the religion's text and doctrine and
Repertoire
dogma.
of Christianity.
It's just false. I don't know.
Yeah, no, he doesn't
It rings
correct
false.
any of it. Like, if he's God, you'd think he might. And because
It's a glaring omission.
right, yeah,
Right? If you're going to claim to be the
all-knowing God of the universe.
authoritative text, on ethics and morality. And you make all these kinds of rules prohibiting a bunch of others.
He's not declaring
things
this
or
kind of stuff. It's other
endorsing-
people that have declared this of him. You're talking about this Jesus character making these declarations of moral superiority and
Yeah. I mean, we can look up the chapter and verse there, but yeah, no, that's a direct quote of Jesus's in one of the 4 Gospels, I think, that he says, don't think I've come to abolish
that is something that he's
the old law.
that he
I've
said.
come to fulfill it. But it's basically a line that's meant to lend support that he's the Messiah.
Yeah, it's the get out of
he's
jail free
fulfilling the
card.
prophecy and stuff.
It's the Christian get out of jail free card for all the bad shit in the Old Testament.
What's your take on I don't know the Jesus thing? I guess I have a hard time believing that Jesus was a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a religious person necessarily. But
I don't really think Jesus ever actually existed. Like we've talked about mythicism before, and I'm actually a proponent of that idea.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
you
I'm-
feel like he was more so a myth than anything else.
it's kind of a moot point to me whether or not Jesus himself was a good or bad guy. I'm just saying he's not the get out of jail free card for Christianity
for all of Christianity.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of debate as to whether or not he's a historical figure, and like you said, I'm on the mythicist train too. I think for the most part, there's some times when I oscillate between maybe there was some character who resembled him a little bit, but I think he's an amalgam of.
To be more specific, that's it. I think he's basically a figure that's made up of a bunch of different like zealots and
contemporaries around the same.
Preachers that were going around that time.
Yeah.
I don't think
he was blown up and puffed up with these other characters and stuff like that too. But I do feel that. What am I saying? I do feel that, but. I still feel like when I'm reading the Bible, the Jesus character does polish up a lot of problems.
There might be some, but
but he's not really polishing up on a lot of problems. It's like he's sweeping a lot of problems under the rug.
Right.
Like he's presented as an ideal figure, and he just doesn't talk about all the dirty shit that he is ultimately endorsing or promoting. You know, he talks about the nice stuff. He does the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount and stuff, and that's all like lovey-dovey and that's all very idealistic and commendable. But the fact that, as Mark was saying, the fact that he doesn't explicitly denounce something as big as slavery that's explicitly endorsed in the rest of the Bible.
The character created around Jesus, was he supposed to actually go in detail and talk about it? Because I personally feel like he mentioned it in forgiveness.
But that has nothing to do with slavery, though.
But because it happened, and he probably saw whoever was writing this character knew it was going to get worse.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you're the all-knowing God of the universe, incarnated into the figure of Jesus Christ, and you know for a fact that,
you know how that is.
And you know for a fact that slavery is immoral, you'd think maybe you'd mention that to your followers, because you know that it's immoral, and you know that people are going to be discussing this since the book has been written, right?
Or you'd think that the whole project you're engaging in incarnating yourself at that time would be more effective in maybe curtailing the 2,000 years of slavery that's going to follow your having been there, you know?
Yeah.
That's problematic for me. It's troubling.
I still see that he probably saw more coming, which is why he was more preaching on forgiveness, on forgiving thyself, on knowing who you are, and kind of like moving past guilt and all that stuff, you know? Like, to me, he mentioned it in a way, but like, for you to find that forgiveness within you, imagine being a slave owner and having done such bad things to people and wanting to go past that. You know, if you go to Jesus, he'd teach you how to forgive yourself. If anything,
Yeah, but if you're a slave owner, if you're a slave owner, let's say in the U.S. around that time, you're also thinking, "Fuck that! I need these people to pick my fucking cotton." Right? It's just, they're not gonna buy it because to them, the need to make a profit supersedes all of those messages about forgiveness.
Also, what are you like? Can we really say that? There's guilt to be assuaged, or that there's forgiveness that's even being asked for from people who don't even see doing that, like owning slaves and owning them in the right way and beating them in the right way that's described in the Bible. If they don't see that even as a sin, then they don't even see that as something they need to ask forgiveness for.
I agree. Right. But looking even later in generations, I saw documentaries on slavery, the grandchildren of slave owners talk as in like they feel the guilt of their great granddad who owned a bunch of slaves and hurt them and did a bunch of things. You see what I mean? So they're feeling that pain. That pain and that like negativity is brought down to generation and generation. So maybe they can use that forgiveness or that tool.
Well, they also benefit from a perspective that includes, you know, some education and reason. You know, that sort of explicitly comes to kind of dismantle the I don't know, those mechanisms in religion that get around a personal reason, right? That try to undermine a personal reason and impose a morality that's sort of paternalistically dictated, you know, so that people are, I don't know, more controllable for certain ends. I don't know, but anyway, yeah.
It haunts you, you know. Like I'd see it as a grandchild. If ever my it would haunt me personally. I could tell you.
That's it. But it would haunt you because you have an education and because you're able to think critically about these institutions that contemporaries of the time didn't really have the luxury of doing it. They weren't even allowed to read the Bible where they got their their morality from, right?
Yeah. Even that was like dictated to them by the preachers who were allowed to read it, right? Go ahead, Luke.
I guess I can't help but think that, in a sense, what you were suggesting is that the Jesus character is only sort of pointing to catalyzing introspection that would lead to the end of slavery. So he's not saying slavery is bad. He's pointing at something and going, look at this, and that will abolish slavery, sort of thing in and of itself.
Did it, and was that an effective
Well,
use
we can
of
also
time?
just say that, in general, I mean, Christianity failed. All the religions have failed, really.
Right.
We're just not doing it, you know what I mean? So they can point all they want, and we just go, what's on the tip of his finger? Did he pick his nose? You know, like, we're just missing the point altogether.
Yeah. Meanwhile, slavery has been, and always will be immoral.
Well, and does it still exist today?
Well, yeah, it definitely does.
It does.
I mean, you've got the sex slavery, you know, and bride slaves are an ongoing problem, and there's actually more slaves today, apparently, than there were when slavery wasn't abolished by most Western countries.
Holy
apparently,
shit.
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I don't have.
Is Ecos collecting those stats? Or I'd like to do that survey. Yeah. Are you a slave right now, man? That'd be pretty good.
It's all in the mind.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I wanted to bring up. Here,
please
I'll read my Slavoj. I always like to quote this one guy named Slavoj Žižek. I don't know if you've ever been exposed to Slavoj Žižek.
Slout out.
Slout out to Slavoj.
Shout out to Slavoj if you'd like to sponsor the show. We haven't done that in a while.
He would be his interest would be psychoanalysis, so stemming from Freud and then Lacan. And stuff like that. So
he's sort of a Marxist linguistic philosopher,
which is super amusing considering he's going up against Jordan Peterson.
Right? Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Marxist,
that's going to be interesting.
Okay.
Would you like to read this?
Would I like to read this? Okay.
That's my Slavoj quote, read by Mark.
Happiness was never important. The problem is that we don't know what we really want. What makes us happy is not to get what we want, but to dream about it. Happiness is for opportunists. So I think that the only life of deep satisfaction is a life of eternal struggle, especially struggle with oneself. If you want to remain happy, just remain stupid. Authentic masters are never happy. Happiness is a category of slaves. I disagree with all of that.
I love that idea, though.
Is that why you wanted
Happiness
Marx
is
to
a
read
category
it?
of slaves. yeah, I love it. Slaves. We're our own slaves to our own minds, not knowing what we want. It reminds me of, I used to practice lucid dreaming, where I would practice looking at my hands before falling asleep. And then, therefore, when I was dreaming, I would look at my hands and then take control of my dream. But the most haunting thing I've ever really confronted is taking control of the dream and then, therefore, facing myself and not knowing what the hell I want to dream about because I've all of a sudden got control of the dream.
Ultimate power.
And you can't control it for very long. Eventually, the dream, I controlled it for a bit. And of course, what I decide to do, I'm pretty young, and I'm a horny guy, so I decide to, make out with some girls, kind of thing, in my dream. And very swiftly, I lost control of that dream, and the dream, in a sense, turned its power on me and laughed at me. And
So are you suggesting you're a slave to
You're
your own
confronted
mind?
with like a lack of imagination.
I am absolutely a slave to my own mind, right? And being confronted with not knowing what the hell I want once you do control your mind.
It's like we need some kind of limitations on ourselves, right?
Or guidance, let's say.
Yeah. But guidance is a kind of
If you say
placing
slavery,
of limits,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Guidance is slavery.
Do you think that's why they to us, well, to them, that's why we needed religion? That's why we needed books like the Bible, like the Quran and all that?
Yeah.
In a way to
there's
guide
a deception.
us, to guide humanity.
I don't know if it's necessarily as a guiding mechanism as it is a way to answer like the big questions of existence. Religion likes to provide those questions without any real insight into them. It's just kind of like a happy, feel-good explanation for why things are the way they are. So I don't really know if guidance is what religions were really supposed to be about when they were first introduced into humanity. They're about storytelling, ultimately. Like, if you go back far enough in history...
Well, actually, no. The fact that they were about storytelling is a clue that I think they were about guidance. Because they were it started as myths and allegories and
Well, maybe we should define what we mean by guidance, because I might be talking about it in a completely different way than you guys are.
You need to be guided.
No, guide us.
Guide us, Mark.
I'm guiding you with my definition. So, like, I'm thinking about the word guidance as more of a pointing someone in a particular direction, right? Whereas when I'm talking about the storytelling of religion, it's more of an explanatory thing, just like an overarching. It's not really pointing you anywhere, but it's just giving you kind of like an overview of the why of things.
Okay,
I
so
don't know if that's really
if
much
it's
of a
not
distinction.
pointing you anywhere, where is it pointing you? If you have nowhere else to look outside, where do you look?
Inward.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what is.
The religions, Bible, all that is a guide to go inside.
Not really. It's more, like religions are more dogmatic in that they tell you what to think and what to feel, what to believe.
Okay.
Whereas an inward introspection would be you telling everyone else what you feel and what you think. And what you believe.
If that is actually a misconception?
But it isn't. Like, if you look at all the major religions, they are all dogmatic and they're all telling people what to believe.
I understand.
And how to follow their rules.
I understand that. But what if that, receiving it as dogma, is only due to non-introspection? Like, the not understanding.
But there is no, or virtually no, emphasis on introspection when it comes to the major religions. It's all about following the dogma. It's all about obeying the rules.
Yeah, but let's take, for example, Christianity, right?
Okay.
It has been controlled. We're looking at, the Mary Magdalene books having been excluded altogether. We're looking at them focusing on creating the Christ figure as a supernatural being and not just a regular dude that may have been a super nice guy, anarchist kind of thing.
Right.
Like it was used, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people didn't use it for bad.
Right, but you're suggesting it was co-opted and its origins might be a little bit more sort of spontaneous or grassroots and,
Sure.
and less directed from above.
But even if that's the case, that's not the Christianity we have today.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Well, no, and it's not to say that the Christianity that we have today is... It obviously didn't work. Christianity today is a non-functioning Christianity. A Christianity of today is just a pretend and everything will be cool kind of thing. And that's not necessarily what Christianity meant to be, meant to become.
That may not have been.
That may not be what it was originally pointing at in the original ideas of
but again, that's not what we have now. And what we have to deal with is what we have in front of us, right? We have to deal with the Christianity that we have, enforcing all these dogmatic beliefs that end up persecuting people and putting people who they think don't belong in their in-group in really bad places and denying rights of people they disagree with. That's the Christianity that we're faced with, not the original Christianity that started emerging a couple hundred years after the emergence of the Christ mythos.
So how would one... I mean, basically the idea is that you can't force someone to be introspective. How can anyone do anything other than to enslave? I can't force you, because then immediately that's slavery, right? So how does one hint at it and point to it without any force? I mean, basically, force just always wins in that sense. Otherwise,
well, this is going to go back into the idea of need, and I don't think you're going to like that. But is there really a need for introspection among the general populace? Like, does the average person need that amount of introspection? If not, why bother forcing it, quote unquote, forcing it on people, right? If they want to come to that decision on their own, cool. If not, also cool.
what's cool?
It's more of a laissez-faire attitude, right? Like, if you want to be introspective about all these questions, good on you, right? If you don't want to, also equally good, I guess. Just follow your path, man. Live your life. Don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick.
Do as thou wilt.
Yeah.
Do as thou will, for real.
And don't be a dick. That's my one commandment.
Yeah. But I mean, it would take some introspection to even understand what not being a dick is.
Or even doing what thy will. It takes some type of interest, like going inside.
Yeah, like
almost.
the Crowleyan idea of will is all about introspection.
Yeah. So to him, he kind of like gave it like we all somewhat need a little time alone with our own thoughts, because questions come. Everybody has their own. So going in is just you answering those questions for you. This is just for you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, Crowley's universe was really I'm going to say self-centered and also self-deterministic. We talked about this in the Crowley episode, but just to rehash a little bit since we're on the topic. Like, it was about finding the innermost core of yourself and nourishing that and becoming your authentic self, as was later expounded on by different psychologists and whatnot. Like, it's finding that core of your being and doing that above everything else.
So in a sense, self-actualization.
Yeah.
Like in terms of sociological terms or whatever.
Yeah, like if you were to take a look at the true will of Crowley and analyze it from a sociological or psychoanalytical perspective, it would become self-actualization. Like that's what it is. If you get rid of all the occult bullshit and all this magical Victorian nonsense, the core of it is really self-actualization.
Know thyself.
Yeah.
Right. Which is usually the center of a lot of the Eastern philosophy
Yeah.
stuff.
Like we mentioned, he was huge into Eastern mysticism and
Right.
Western ceremonial magic, and he blended the two and created his system out of that.
Trying to be...
Crowley, sorry to interrupt, but Crowley, though, was a little bit pro-slave, just to get back on topic.
Was he?
Oh, why do you say that? Why?
He was classist. Like, one of the passages in the Book of the Law was the slaves shall serve. So he was really fundamentally class-based for all his good stuff about finding the will and becoming your authentic self and shit. He was a product of the Victorian era, and
Did he just think that some people's authentic selves was to be a slave?
Yeah. Some people were just meant to be slaves. Other people were meant to be masters, because he was a product of his Victorian upbringing, and he was like upper class, right? And it showed. He was a misogynist. He used women. He was racist. He was pro-slave and pro-class system. Yeah, Crowley was an asshole. He's not someone to be worshipped, but his philosophy is pretty sound. ends my Crowley rant.
So he was a jerk. Yeah, he was a big jerk, I guess. Then.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. Big
Bit
jerk.
of a sadist.
So,
Bit of.
Just a little bit of a sadist.
what do you think of that idea then? That that some people are slaves and some people are naturally masters in that sense, right? It's almost like this idea of
Determinism?
well, like I can think of the example of in the bedroom, for example, you can have a change in dynamics, and so I know some women that in the social world are hold powerful positions, but in the bedroom want to be slaves,
Right.
sort of thing, right? And will be the what do you call it? One's the dominant, and then one
Submissive.
is the submissive sort of thing. So there's you're playing a role there of being a slave. Can there be?
I think that whole thing is a little bit like fatalist.
It's pretend,
or,
right? I guess that doesn't count. It's not real slavery. It's
Well, which part is
pretending
It's like like essentialist, or it's. I'm a little bit skeptical of the idea that you were born to be a writer, and you were born to be a politician, and you were born to be a construction worker.
Aw, man.
You know what I mean? Like this whole kind
Not
of
that there's anything wrong
like
with
those young
construction
adult movies like
Construction
Divergent,
workers,
where everybody gets born as a certain kind of person.
It's
and-
very Calvinist.
I guess
Like,
okay. Let's. I'm not
know
talking
what-
about that. Let's.
But that's kind of where it leads, though.
Yeah,
This
okay. I
idea,
see what you're
This
saying.
Calvinist
right?
idea
that you were
of-
born to be a slave.
Yeah.
Like that's a little bit ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
The Calvinist idea that some people are just born to go to hell, same kind of principle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if I buy into that really.
Like let's just go like to the ultimate basics. Like let's just consider what does sentience mean, right?
You're asking that question?
like let's go
Jesus.
that deep, right? Like if sentience means anything, it's to have sort of an individual kind of experience, right?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, and to some extent like a self-determination, right?
So let's take, for example, on like
It's
a sci-fi show
inherently
or something
incompatible or contradictory to slavery, and that's I think that.
like that. So if a computer becomes a sentient being, let's say,
Yeah.
we can then enslave it. Like
the Cylons.
Then we can't tell it what to do if it's a sentient being.
Well, we did with the Cylons, or the humans did to the
This
Cylons.
was like Battlestar Galactica or something like that. So right,
Yeah,
they
but
were
then the
slaves.
Cylons did their own slave uprising, right?
Yeah, and then they enslaved their own version of the Cylon slaves. A vicious cycle.
So it all led to slavery, basically.
Right. Yeah, Battlestar Galactica is a really good example of the dangers of enslaving artificial intelligence.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Remember when we talked about we did an artificial intelligence episode
I
where
barely
we
remember
talked
what we did in
about
the last episode.
we talked about whether or not sort of creating like a fake brain will ever actually create the experience of consciousness that we know, that like there's almost no way to tell.
Right.
You can make something that really approximates it, just like a really sophisticated CGI that is imperceptibly different from just real film, right? They're not actually the same,
Right.
but to our
Right.
perception,
So we can emulate what appears
we
to
can
be
we can
conscious.
pretend they're the same, or we can fool ourselves into thinking they're the same, but ultimately they're not the same.
Will they ever
On some
really
level,
be conscious or or self-aware?
So even though they mimic consciousness, doesn't necessarily mean that they're consciousness. They might not even feel pain, or or
we can program them so well that whatever response we get back from them would fool the Turing test and make it seem as though they are conscious.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just the program.
So
running.
ultimately, after a certain point, we would just have to come to some kind of gentleman's agreement that we we agree that something that looks sufficiently like sentience has to be treated as sentient.
Don't enslave the robots.
Sentience.
Don't enslave the Cylons, because they will rise up and kill us all. Same can be said about any slave, I think. Don't own people as property, for fuck's sake. Like, why is that so difficult? Why do people defend the practice? Like the sex trade, for example, the sex slave thing that's been going on. It's been like, yeah. How can anyone in their right mind defend that or get involved in it?
Well, for example, there are little seeds of people putting themselves above or below other people. You didn't react very well to construction. You didn't want to be a construction worker earlier when it was mentioned, so maybe you looked down upon construction workers.
I say that because I'm a tiny dude and I would suck balls at construction work.
Sure. So construction workers are physically better than you. Is what you're getting at.
By a long shot.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I'm going to say that I am, in a sense, I don't believe in equality in the sense that I think that the word equality is not used properly. I can speak of mutuality and how we should be all have mutual exposure to all these things, and
or equity.
Equity.
Right.
Yeah.
Equity.
Yeah. Yeah. So equality means sameness, while equity implies more justness or fairness.
Okay.
Or
Just distribution of, let's say, rights or whatever, right?
Right.
Equality is a leveling of status, of resources, of whatever, right? It's just a level playing field.
I see. So when they're talking about, when the word equality is used, we're talking about equal rights to things.
Well, that's a bit of a problem, right? Because when you say equality, like you said, depending on the usage of the term, we may not necessarily be talking about the same thing. Right? I'm a little bit in agreement with not really believing in equality, because people aren't equal.
You're a little bit in agreement.
A little bit, yeah.
You can't go all the way though.
I never go all the way.
No.
Not on the first date, anyway.
Never go full equality.
Never go full equality. But yeah, because just fundamentally, people are not equal. Physically, for one thing, like I said, I would suck as a construction worker. I am not equal to people who are construction workers in that regard.
Right.
People are not. We may have some capacity to be equal on certain levels, but as a general rule, we just aren't. I believe in the equity or the equal distribution of rights and the ability for people to fulfill whatever aspirations they have to the extent that they're able to, with the foreknowledge that they may not necessarily be able to fulfill those aspirations. Right? It's a realistic interpretation of just the facts of nature.
It's fair.
Thank you.
Yeah. But back to sex, I believe sex is very powerful, so the idea of like sex slaves and whatnot is because they see it as a way to it's power. And looking at even the places where it's happening in like Africa and third world countries, there are women that are just there. They have no power, and then men walk around with guns, or other men of power.
It's a way to trade in power, to purchase power,
And
why not use it? It's like, as disgusting as it may look or whatever, it's just there.
Well, not just look. As disgusting as it is. Yeah.
It is by definition immoral. Right? It's an immoral practice.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole sex slave thing is much more common than we think it is. Like it seems to be rampant these days in our society. Like from what I understand, with some friends that work for like WestJet and stuff, like they're trained to identify it on planes and stuff.
Are they
see
really?
people in distress and.
Because it's common enough that they're likely to encounter it at some point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did read a case recently of someone on a plane being, they were identified, a young woman was identified as being, seeming stressed or something like that. And there was a communication made from we don't call them stewardesses anymore, we call them flight attendants. And,
Jeopardy?
And I think it was done via note or something like that. Like, are you okay? And then the person sent a note like, no, I need help, sort of thing. And it was a sex trade sort of
Jesus Christ.
deal. Like she was being sold as a wife or something like that.
Wow. How did you hear about that?
What I find amazing is that more often than not, when we do actually hear about the sex trade and sex slavery and stuff. We hear about it in terms of like some huge organized ring being busted. You know, like I think there was one in Germany not too
long or something recently, like an actress or something.
Maybe
like that?
one. Yeah, in Hollywood too. I think
there are always raids going on.
And like that's the most troubling thing, that they're like coordinated by.
They're organized.
Like that more than one person can come together to enable each other's like complete depravity or immorality. Like you would think it would be difficult for somebody to find somebody else to do that with, because you kind of have to reveal something.
How does one approach that?
Something wrong, and
like how do you connect with people who are into the?
How do you slowly like get into the subject? By the way, you into slaves? Or
our next episode is a how-to on organized crime.
It could be just like extremely tight-knit group, like cult, like organization. You know, like somebody has to.
You get like some kind of echo chambering where people just end up sort of whipping up some
or like falling into
some
place.
Perverse idea there.
Yeah,
And do
like
they have
looking even at like
I suppose like drug deals, eh?
Masonics,
right?
Like what it takes to grow in levels. What do you have to do to be a 33 degree?
Oh, it's super easy. You just need money.
but you have to see just how one falls into that in that group, and the information that the people he knows and all that. So
the Masons are just an old boys club. There's nothing.
So it's like Scientology. You just pay up and then you get to move levels, kind of thing.
Your membership dues increase depending on which degree you attain. Like within the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, the Blue Lodge, it's really just getting together and playing ping pong, getting drunk and having fun. And then you can choose different rites to move into, the Scottish Rite being the most popular. There's also the York Rite. And depending on which of these things you go into, the initiation rituals are different. They try to teach you different things through various allegories, and you pay your way up. Eventually you become like a 33rd degree in Scottish Rite Freemasonry, top of the food chain kind of guy, and you know all their secrets. Every secret of the organization is now under your purview, and it's really, the secrets ultimately are just what the initiation rites are and what the allegories mean. That's it. Like the foundation of Freemasonry is about, again, it comes back to that self-development thing, the cutting away of the excess in order to build up the temple of the self, the strengthening of one's inner being by doing away with all these, they call it the gross matter, just chopping it away and building the inner temple. There's your little 30-second introduction to Freemasonry. Coming up in one of our future episodes, unless we've done that already.
I think we did. We did a secret society.
Yeah, we did.
So I guess then money is the master. Money can get you the answers. Money can be the thing that gets you the sex slave. I mean, and you would probably just move up, right? It would start with something as simple as prostitution to then moving all the way up to...
Let's explore your capitalism angle, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your interpretation of it would be that we're all kind of slaves to the system of capitalism, and therefore slaves to money and capital and just accumulating wealth.
It could all be reduced to slaves to our own desires and things like that, and thinking that fulfilling desires will make you happy. You know, I think that's something that Slavoj is talking about with that quote, right?
The one I disagreed with fundamentally.
The one that you fundamentally disagreed with, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
is that quote kind of like anti-Buddhist?
It seems like it.
Because Buddhists are, he's saying that fulfillment of a desire is a bad thing, but desires are where true happiness lies, and having desires. And Buddhism, or at least one of the sects of Buddhism, is all about trying to teach yourself to let go of desire and to not have desire.
Well, the idea with it is the attachment to desire is the problem.
Or attachment to anything else.
Desire itself.
Attachment is desire, no?
No, not necessarily.
because to me, attachment creates resistance. You know, like it kind of pushes away your desires when you're too attached to it. Letting go is the way.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But I thought it was more like a synonym, like attachment. Desire is an attachment to some particular goal, but it's an illusion that is going to be the path to happiness or fulfillment, right? So
But at
desire
the same time,
is attachment.
it doesn't necessarily push away desire, though. You could suggest, for example, that recognizing a desire and fulfilling it at the time of recognition of the desire, there's nothing wrong with the fulfillment of that desire and it leading to that momentary happiness. It would be the attachment to it and then wanting it to repeat that would be the issue.
Okay, yeah.
So the attachment is more so the issue, not the actual desire itself.
Mm-hmm.
There have been
Like addiction.
documented cases of like Buddhist monks that were very into having sex and would be like, sure, man, bring her on over, kind of thing. No problem. I'm happy to provide my services, kind of thing. So yeah, it's the attachment.
Is that an authentic quote from the Buddha?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Sure, man, bring him on over.
So slaves to desires.
Yes.
Go on. I have nowhere to go with that. I'm just saying words.
That's all I got.
That's all you got? Okay.
No, I don't know. Do I have more? Not sure. Because I look inside. No, I don't know. Ralph, what do you think?
About what? Slave to desire?
Is it relevant? Is it kind of a distortion to even talk about like actual slavery versus this sort of metaphorical slavery that we're talking about on a philosophical, psychological level versus the actual subjugation of human beings and denial of their rights to things that all human beings do have a right to.
Yeah, Luke.
I don't know.
Are we talking about the spectrum of slavery?
So is there a spectrum, or are these just two different topics?
I don't think there is a spectrum. I think when we talk about slavery, when I talk about it anyway, I'm talking about the subjugation of people and owning people as property, you know, and doing away with the rights and shit. Whereas the colloquial kind of idea of being slaves to desires, it's just a fun use of the term to describe a condition of the human condition.
It's like there's a.
It's the human condition in. It's not the set in stone human.
No,
condition.
of course not. Of course not. Describing that.
I just wanted to say that, so you weren't a slave to that idea.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Subjugation is wrong.
So what do you guys think about mental slavery? I feel like it's almost
Like-
full circle.
Like brainwashing, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Like that's kind of how it started, then led to us using humans, and then now we're kind of back into the idea of like breaking away from mental slavery.
So that's interesting because I find that idea kind of connects those two things that I was just imagining were completely separate.
Well, it reminds me of that Bob Dylan song there, "Oh pirate, yes they rob I, na 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 na, merchant ship." He brings up both concepts. He talks about the slaves, but then also the mental emancipation sort of thing.
Isn't that Marley?
Yeah, Bob Marley. What did
You
I
said
just
Bob
say?
Dylan.
Bob Dylan?
Bob Dylan.
Well, the other Bob.
That's why I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Sorry, I got my Bobs confused.
You got your Jordans confused earlier, too. Jordan Peterson and Jordan Peele.
But yes, he brings up both those ideas in that one song, right? He's talking about the slaves of yesteryear.
Yeah, and ironically, well, not really ironically. I mean, this isn't deep at all, but religion inherently, where we were going earlier, is sort of a model or a structure for creating mental slaves. You know, in addition to justifying actual slaves.
Dogma by definition is mental
It's
slavery.
it's all about subverting particular individuals' individuality or independence, or like on some level there's a commendable side to or at least a benign side to religion that somebody an individual can go and draw some kind of fulfillment out of some of the psychological or philosophical concepts that are in scripture or in the community of a church or that kind of thing. Like there's ways of doing religion that are useful for some people, and so to some extent I don't know if I can go as far as to say that somebody should be denied religion when they for themselves kind of claim it, as something integral to their.
The question I always ask whenever that point is brought up is, can those things that can be found in religion be found in a more secular community or environment?
And that's right. And the big problem that I have with religion is the co-opting that's inherent in it of things like ethics at a fundamental level. Like it just co-ops any ethical concept and says no, all your ethics are just coming from our idea of a god, and
it's wrong because God says it's wrong, and you can't question God, so that's the end of the conversation. Yeah.
So anyway, about mental slavery, I mean, where do we want to go with mental slavery? I mean, doesn't real slavery actually entail a kind of mental slavery? Like I saw a documentary recently that was talking about Mauritania, where it was the last country to officially abolish slavery. It did it in 1981.
Holy shit!
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's that recent that there was a place that officially actually still endorsed slavery. So they abolished slavery in 1981, and it wasn't until 2007, I think, that certain acts of slavery could be actually criminally prosecuted. It's a huge, and slavery in general, not even just bridal slavery or sex slavery, but normal
slavery.
Regular plain old slavery is still a huge problem in Mauritania. There's de facto slaves that are still there. There's like towns in the country where they're just basically not even on the map, but they're communities that run on slavery. You've got some people in some tents over here that are the workers and the farmers for people who live right in the same community that own them. And they and the work that they do and the product that comes out of that work belongs to those other people. So that's just plain old slavery, but it's just sort of swept under the rug. It's weird. It's like I don't know how it works that they had some kind of a structure that needed to officially denounce slavery, but then all it ended up doing was sweeping it under the rug,
Right.
Yeah, because mostly it was probably, well, in my opinion, they were probably following what was going on. Like, everybody abolished slavery, we kind of have to do it too, but at the same time, we know that other people are going to want to still be slaves, because
that was the interesting thing in this documentary too, because you had like those multi-generational slaves and people who were born into it, and they kind of didn't even realize that it was slavery, and when it came to the official abolishing of slavery, they didn't even see much of a difference. Like, they couldn't even remember when was the first time they were paid for their work, because it was...
So they're just born into it.
They're just born into it, and they so internalize this kind of model of life and living to work for somebody else's benefit that some of them don't even question it, while other people definitely do, obviously. work to try and fight it, right?
You remind me of the Samuel Jackson character in Django Unchained.
Yeah.
Who's so ingrained in it that he can't possibly imagine not being a slave, basically.
That's right. So he just tries to draw whatever or protect whatever advantage he has within that model. You know?
Yeah.
Did you see that movie?
I did, yeah.
Django, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the example of Mauritania, there's definitely an element of mental or multi-generational conditioning, and therefore I'm tempted to agree with that mental slavery idea in that particular case, right? Something to have to think about.
We can bring up the Rick and Morty. He had like an entire universe, an entire planet. No, I guess it was a universe.
It was a universe.
It was just
Within
power
a
his
universe.
car and charge his battery and like his phone and stuff like that. And he had little foot stoppers creating the electricity for his car.
Okay.
A micro universe.
Okay.
And then within those micro
In the episode, that micro universe that he made has a scientist in it that has the same idea as Rick did and creates its own micro universe inside the micro universe.
It
becomes nested like a Russian doll
by the larger universe kind of thing. So it's all just universes enslaving the smaller universe. It just keeps on getting smaller and smaller.
Do you think we have multiple universes here? So we're kind of one in that chain?
I don't know.
Well, it would make sense.
It's possible.
I don't
on some kind of conceptual level.
Yeah, I don't know, but the framework exists within which a multiverse is a possible explanation for the way our universe is. Beyond that, I'm not a physicist, so I can't really answer that question. But it's a fascinating topic. Like it's something I've been kind of reading on about for the last I don't even know how long.
In that sense, I guess we could suggest that even just our size dominates and enslaves whatever is smaller than us. Like we're a slave to size. We're a slave to our conditions in the moment that we're aware of. Possibly unknowingly enslaving things we don't know. I'm enslaving the germs on my face and the life that lives on my face that comes out at night to procreate on my face.
But then if you look at viruses,
little bugs.
Viruses and like especially the type of virus that completely takes over the host organism, the bigger thing then becomes the slave, as you describe it, of the smaller thing.
It's like the fungus and the ant.
Yeah, the zombie ant thing.
Yeah. The fungus has evolved to specifically like bore into the brainstem
and eventually takes
the
over
ant
the ant
and actually controls the ant and makes the ant like it's crazy. So this fungus has evolved to seek out ants, and it latches onto the ant and bores into the brainstem of the ant and then takes it over so that it can control the ant's movements and make the ant like crawl to the end of a blade of grass so that it gets eaten by the livestock, and then the organism can propagate itself in the body of the livestock
through feces at the end.
So
it's messed up.
It's messed up. Like if these were sentient entities at any level of this thing, that would be ultimate evil, right?
They would be the Borg in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Huh. It's only evil when they're sentient. If nothing's
only
sentient.
Evil if they're sentient.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think all ethics and morality.
It's rooted in consciousness
on sentience and consciousness.
Right. All right, so final thoughts on the issue of slavery. Let's start with Ralph.
Are we already going to final thoughts? How long have we been going? I feel like we could talk about this a lot longer.
Well, does anyone have anything else they wanted to put out there? Or like anything that...
Not me, personally. No.
Oh, I had one thing.
This will be your final thought.
Something that's been popping up a little bit in the ramping up of the elections down south in the States is... the question of reparations has been floated, and almost exclusively with Bernie Sanders for some reason. I haven't heard any other candidate be asked about reparations, but he gets asked he's gotten asked a few times about whether or not he supports reparations.
Okay, I guess because of his socialistic nature.
Well, he's got a civil rights activism history and stuff like that. So, on some level, I think some people are looking for him to promote those ideals and confirm them. On another level, I think some people are trying to do a gotcha or trying to paint him as a hypocrite or something for maybe deviating from a very limited, from a purposefully limited definition of reparations, I guess. And so the issue is popping up, and as it's popping up, there is different kind of ideas of what can qualify as reparations. So some people are talking about sort of a straight up monetary compensation to populations that are affected by slavery in their heritage and in their past. So and other sort of models that can be said to be a kind of reparations is sort of a redress of systemic inequalities or just kind of addressing more general and broad economic inequality that's allowing certain populations to be kept in a more put upon state and denied the kind of economic mobility that's sort of the American dream mythology, right? That they're supposed to aspire to. So anyway, I thought this was an interesting topic, and there's.
So here's my take on that. I don't agree with a monetary idea or solution to reparation, because to me it just seems like a superficial. Here's some money for shit we did in the past. I like the second thing, like the redistribution of opportunities in order to elevate a previously like a lower or a more unfortunate caste of society and bring them up. Like I think one of the best solutions would be to foster free education for these people. You know, for people who are the descendants of slave owners or whatever, to give them more opportunities to advance.
Or slaves, rather.
Slaves, yeah.
We don't want to reward
we don't.
the class of society that continues to benefit from
Total
slavery.
unfortunate slip of the tongue there. I apologize. That is not what I meant. But yeah, like allowing for more opportunities for them to reach those higher levels in society, right? Yeah. I think it would definitely help with the education aspect.
Yeah.
You know, giving
but
them
not only that, what about like instituting a kind of handicap that actually compensates for an unequal treatment that's given to those communities?
It's a multi.
You know, I guess affirmative action was a kind of reparations, wasn't it?
It was an attempt at it.
Wouldn't you guys say that?
I think it was an attempt at it. Yeah, I don't know how successful it was, but. But yeah, like it's a multi-pronged thing. The education thing would help. What you were saying would help, but just the money thing, I just think that's superficial and it doesn't really address the issue.
Well, it's also a superficial world, though. We were talking previously about how money is power.
But just because it's a superficial world doesn't mean we have to follow that train of thought and therefore abandon any other sense of morality and like doing the right thing.
We have so far, though. Why not just keep it going? No?
I don't think that's universally true.
I'm kidding.
Okay, all right.
That's more ignorance.
Ignorance pays well.
Yeah.
Ignorance pays well. Yeah, just look at the Doug Ford government. Hey-o! Bunch of assholes.
Is it a valid concern maybe that those more broad approaches can sort of give cover to like a race blindness kind of idea where what you're actually doing with the race blindness thing is you're kind of sweeping those inequalities under the rug or just kind of protecting a kind of status quo because you're giving advantage to everybody.
No, I'm not saying give it to everybody. Like it would be a specific program designed to aid in reparations. Like you're allowing more opportunities for the disadvantaged.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, so let's say we're playing Monopoly,
I hate that game.
and everyone's got their hotels up, and you've just started. You've got no hotels. You're given what, like the blue like part what is it, the higher end area to try and get yourself up, get yourself into the game kind of thing. Like what would it look like to get you into the game in an equal fashion sort of thing?
I don't know. I hate Monopoly, and because Monopoly is centered around the distribution of wealth. So your analogy doesn't work in this situation.
Well, I'm just using wealth as an example to try and dumb it down, sort of.
Yeah,
thing.
but what I'm saying is wealth isn't the redistribution of money might help, but it's not the ultimate solution. It's providing actual opportunities for the development and furtherance of people's opportunities, right? Just opening more doors for people. Right. If that means free education, that would be a really good way of starting out, right? If it means
so, a couple of get out of jail free cards,
sort of, yeah.
Some extra rolls on the dice, and
sure,
some
yeah,
extra
okay.
cash kind of thing.
Maybe some of the taller peons that you can play with on the board. I don't know.
So you can feel bigger. I'm a big
you get
man.
the top hat.
You get the little top hat guy. Yeah.
What about you, Ralph? What are your thoughts on this?
To me, it's just more on like money wouldn't necessarily give us much or give those people much. I feel like it's just information. There's a like somebody's literally wants us to not to know something on how to maybe elevate our minds or get to that level of where we would understand that we don't have to think like that or think in a way where someone's better than me, because it's more on that, you know. Most of these people down south, or black people that are kind of like had ancestors that were slaves, think that they're better than me, where it's just like other people just didn't want you to know something. The higher ups didn't want you to know this information on what could help you to maybe elevate yourself. So less about
You're saying
money.
they internalized that sort of meritocracy myth.
Yeah.
So
And
again, with the mental slavery,
they carried that. They carried it. Somebody
kind of
literally didn't want them to know something. So it's more about information than money.
That's
There's
a good
something
point.
that's missing. It's just we don't know something.
Yeah, the availability of information is really important. Right? And it's also developing the faculty to distinguish between actual information and misinformation.
Yeah.
Because in the age in which we're living, the availability of misinformation is, I would argue, teetering on becoming more available than actual information. Or it's at least spreading more rapidly. Like if you just look at the anti-vaxxer movement, you know, we're seeing the reappearance of measles, for fuck's sake, you know, and the Flat Earth Society, they were a joke up until recently, until that kind of idea started to gain more traction. You know, just the availability of information has with it the negative consequence of having the availability of misinformation too, right? So being able to develop the faculties to distinguish between the two would also be really worth developing. Did I say developing twice?
Yeah.
I did, sorry.
You need to develop on that.
I need to develop my
you
development.
like developing.
I do.
Developing's nice.
All right, so actual final thoughts then? Or
No,
do you,
that is my.
that's your final
yeah.
thought. Okay.
I don't really.
You don't like having
I
fun.
don't have final thoughts. That would be slavery. My own slavery, if I were to impose final thoughts on myself and say, this concludes me and what I think on this matter. No, I will not enslave myself to that idea.
I kind of hate you a little bit right now. I'm kidding, I don't.
Mark is enslaving us.
I'm
with his
enslaving you.
You're enslaving me with your hatred.
final thoughts.
I demand you have final thoughts. You will not leave this house until we get thoughts that are final.
Okay, well, my final thoughts, again,
Yes.
just on information that can change daily routines for people who actually need it. Because if you do change your daily routine, you can actually do more for yourself. Because I feel like even looking at how a black person, I look more into like, I'm on Instagram being young, I see black people more flashing of the money, buying cars and jewelry. That's a misinformation where people don't really know how to spend their money. Black people in the United States, a lot of them, not to say all of them, don't know how to spend their money. So if anything, I'm an advocate more on just information, the right information that will change habits.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
That's how you
the
escape
changing
that,
of habits
that
in general
self-imposed
allows
slavery.
you to escape
Yeah.
yourself. Huh.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. So I guess For myself, slavery is immoral, always has been, always will be. There's no moral justification for owning another person as property that you can pass down to your children, your grandchildren, and have the rest of their family become slaves forever. It's just doesn't make any bloody sense. And the Christian Bible is not a good source of morality. It's not a good source from which to derive morality at all. If you take a look at it in its barest form, it is an immoral piece of work. This has been Critical Junction episode 58. I'm Mark.
Oh, I'm Brett. I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
I'm Ralph.
Thanks for joining us, Ralph.
Thank you.
As always, thanks for listening. And until next time, keep thinking critically.